Welcome everybody to the show. Five-time WWF Tag Team Champion, Mr. Tony Garea. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Actually, not bad for my age.
Yeah, you can't be. You're not that old. You're getting. You're looking pretty good
Well,
for that age.
1946, do the math. Uh,
So I just want to go over your wrestling career for the next hour or so, and you know, have some fun.
25 when I came here.
Okay.
I came
Okay.
here in March, came
Okay.
to Florida. I think I landed about March 18th, and the first match was March 20th in Orlando against J.C. Dykes and the Infernos. And I came with a wrestler from Australia by the name of Johnny Gray.
Okay. I know that name.
Yeah.
I know that name.
Yeah.
So, you had a chance. Actually, you did work internationally over there, and I heard that you were into rugby more so, but you were making more money doing the professional wrestling, and that's what got you interested. And then you came over here and started working for Eddie Graham, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I, I played rugby there. There was no money involved back then. And it was just for the social activity.
Hmm.
And then you beat the hell out of each other and you went out and you drank beer. And I remember telling some guys, if that's the hardest you can hit, you better save it. Yeah, that's true. And then I went to Australia in 1971 for 3 months, and then I was taken back for 4 by promoter Jim Barnett. And that kind of got me going. And he offered me the chance to come over to America, to Florida, work for Eddie Graham. And I was told by the local guys there that he would only ask you once. So when he asked, I said yes. And I didn't have a pot to pee in. I had nothing financially. And when I landed here, I was going to come for a year, stay for a year. I had $200. Johnny Gray and I, we landed here and we got an apartment, and then we had to buy a car. God almighty, when I think back, like, how the hell did you do that?
It's different times too. I mean, things weren't, financially as bad then as they are these days.
No, I think I had to go in my pocket for gas. I think it was like 28 cents a gallon. Then they
Jeez.
broke me.
I remember when it went up to like $1.75. I thought it was crazy. So
Yeah.
this was how many years ago? Um, you ended up working the San Francisco territory, teaming with Pat Patterson as well.
Yeah, that was in 1976. Yeah,
Yes,
I was there for a year. I went in 76 in January, I think, and I
right.
stayed for a year. I
And
learned a lot there. A lot of guys didn't like the promoter Roy Shires because he was pretty tough on you. But I remember one time in San Jose, he gave out the television matches, and I was working with a local guy by the name of Jerry Monty,
hmm
real good guy. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years back. And I said to Roy, I said, is this going to be a like a baby face match, clean match? He said, yeah. And he was sitting down, he was looking up, and he said, yeah, why, kid? Can't you handle it? And I know he liked to have so many high spots in the match and so many false finishes. I said, no, I can handle it. I said, I just want to think about, some spots and finishes. He said, okay. And we had the match, and he was waiting for me when I came through the door uh, from the studio. And he said, hell of a match, kid. And guys were like amazed because he never commented, to anybody on their match. It was all the negative stuff. Well, why'd you do this? You shouldn't have done that. Well, that wasn't good. Don't do that again. So, I felt quite complimented there.
No, that's good. That's good. If somebody actually goes into their, to say something like that, it's
Yeah, and he was the
I
promoter, I mean,
yeah.
he was the boss man. You couldn't get any higher out there.
So when did you arrive in New York for the WWF? Is that 1972?
1972, it was September 20th in Philadelphia. I done my first TV. What Vince Sr. used to do, he'd bring the guy in to do 2 or 3 TVs. The TVs were done 3 weeks apart. And
Hmm.
they'd do uh, film 3 TVs on Tuesday, and in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Arena, and I forget, I think it was on 10th Street. And then we'd go to Hamburg, Pennsylvania, and do 3 TVs there. And he'd bring you in twice, and then he'd bring you in on the third TV, and you'd start.
Right.
So people would get, familiar. They'd know who you were.
Yeah, it says you made a at the Philadelphia Arena September 20th as a babyface against Davey O'Hannon.
Yeah, Davy O'Hannon. And I found out recently. I said to Davy, I said, "How long you been working?" He said, "About a year." And I said, "Good." And then when we locked up, he locked up on my left side, and he had me a little bit bewildered. That was European style. But I
Yeah.
found out recently he BS'd his way into the business. Yeah,
So
yeah, there
he
was
was
a whole
never properly
article
trained?
about Davy, but Davy's such a great guy. Yeah, I next time I see him, I'm going to grab his left arm and work it.
Um, I actually had a conversation with I'm not sure if you remember Bob Smith from or know who he is from he was a writer for Pro Wrestling Illustrated for a very long time. We did a podcast together. We've done several together over the years, but he mentioned he was talking about being at the what was it? Was it at the Philadelphia Arena when you won your first tag title with Haystacks Calhoun? Was that in Philadelphia at the arena?
I can't remember, but it
Yeah.
possibly was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was talking about being there and then being, the crowd just going absolutely crazy. What was it like teaming up with Haystacks and working with Tanaka and Fuji?
Yeah, well, Tanaka and Fuji, I learned a lot from them, especially Fuji. But, like I was in it at that point there. I was only going to be there till March in my
Hmm.
mind, and then I was going to go back home. But then early 1973, I start getting some not bad paydays for that particular time. So I thought, well, I'll just stay on. So I renewed my visa, and I'm still here. But yeah, to me, it was a job. So they put me with Calhoun, and the thing was, we wrestled in the garden, Fuji against Fuji and Tanaka, and I think the match went either 33 or 27 minutes. I'm not sure, but it was around that time. And I was in the ring all but about 3 minutes of that time because Tanaka and Fuji didn't want to have too much contact with Calhoun because they couldn't do a lot with him. But the whole essence of the tag match was to see the partner who was in trouble tag the big guy. So they just, like, I almost made it, and they'd pull me back and then almost make it again. And then I'd finally make it, and the crowd popped. And I think that's what got me over, actually.
Had to be interesting working with somebody like Haystacks, right?
Yes, well, you know, he was limited as to what he could do, but you know, you knew when you tagged him, it was going to be all over. Generally, he'd
Yeah,
start the match, you know, and take over on the guys, and then give them to me, and they'd, you know, let me shine for a while, and then it was time to get heat.
right.
I just listened. I was young. And I found out years later that that was the thing to do. And a lot of the guys that didn't listen, that started and had the ability to do, you know, to go somewhere, they didn't go anywhere because they didn't listen. You know, they're in the
Yeah,
business 6 months and they figure they know everything. And they're not listening to somebody that's been in the business for like 10 years, 15 years. I had the good fortune, you know, to work with guys like Stan the Man Stasiak, you know, Professor
right.
Tanaka, um, Mr. Fuji, and to watch guys like Chief J. Strongbow and Pedro Morales and,
Yeah,
you know, a
those
lot of other guys, just watched them and understand the psychology of the matches.
right. Those are absolute legends that you mentioned, like those, some of the names that are still talked about today.
Yeah.
Getting great conversations just talking about. Now, I don't even watch like a lot of modern. I don't know. Do you keep up with wrestling at all today, or watch it
No,
at all? Yeah,
no. The only guys that impress me are the Samoan boys. You know,
yeah,
for some reason. And I guess that's a hand me down from Afa and Sika, you
right.
know, like, oh, brother, you know, this is the way you do it, you know. And and Rick and I had a great time with Afa and Sika, as we did with the Moondogs and the Lumberjacks. We had fun.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fun anymore.
No, I find, and I've mentioned this here before. It's like I'm watching less and less of the product today. Apparently there was two big shows last night on television, and I didn't even know about it. 'Cause
Mm,
that's how I'm watching less and less.
yeah.
Because I was keeping up with it, and I was writing for a website and all that stuff, and it's just to me it's become less and less interesting. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
it's not, there are moments that actually really can be very good, but then it's like always, like you said, a lot of the psychology is gone.
Yeah, I think pretty much all the psychology. Like I said, the Samoan boys seem to keep it there.
Yeah, there's a
And,
lot of
you know, unfortunately, we lost Afa and Sika last year.
right,
They had the good fortune to be able to go to both their send-offs, you know, and it was absolutely marvelous, you know. And it was good
right,
to see the young fellas too. Like the Tonga kid came up, he was talking to Afa, and he said, "Hi, Tony," you know, big smile on his face. And I said, "Hi." And I had no clue who he was. And Alpha said, "Do you know who this guy is?" I said, "No, haven't a clue." He said, "Little Sammy." I said, "Get the heck out of here." You know, he's about 50 years old now or some damn thing.
right, right.
Maybe older.
I think he's
Yeah.
older. I'm 50, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, he might
uh,
be older.
and I watched him. He was what for a few years. You know what I mean? He was, yeah. I started watching him when I was sort of a kid, I guess. Still like early teens or
Mm.
whatever, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So you ended up teaming with Dean Ho, and then ended up with another tag title reign.
Yeah. Well, when Haystacks left, Vince's father brought Haystacks in for the summer, and
Right,
then you know we dropped the belts back to Fuji and Tanaka, and then I brought Dean in, and Dean had the ability of karate, kung fu, whatever. So he was, you know, strong opposition to Fuji and Tanaka. So I think that's why, you know, that clicked. Yeah, but Dean was a great guy. He had a great sense of humor, and he was strong as a damn bull too. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years back.
Oh, really? I think I remember reading about that one. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that this was Ho's first WWF. Got to throw that extra W in there. Tag title. And
Mhm.
this was your second. And you, let's see here. You ended up dropping them to the Valiant Brothers on a episode of All-Star
Yeah.
Wrestling just a few months later.
Yeah, and the Valiants, Johnny and Jimmy. What a pleasure they were, to work with, and we drew some money too.
Yeah.
But I watched an old match with me and Dean against the Valiants, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, not
I
being
saw it.
conceited or anything, but and they made me look like a giant killer. Yeah, really good.
I saw Johnny, was it no Johnny, Jimmy Valiant at a convention, I think last summer. He's still out there doing the show,
Yeah,
running his school and making appearances and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I seen him last year in St. Louis. I think was the last time I seen him.
Oh,
Of
really?
course, yeah, yeah. I pop down to Waterloo pretty much every year. Jerry Briscoe's got a hand in that, and
Okay.
Jerry and I have an ongoing thing. He's a day older than me, and he can't get away. But when you do the time change and everything from New Zealand to Oklahoma, we were possibly born about the same time. I haven't worked it out exactly, but it would be the same day. Yeah.
Then you worked a singles career for, it says about 3 years before you ended up teaming up with Zbyszko. Now, Zbyszko was pretty new to coming into the business, into the WWF as well. So what was it like working, transitioning from tag team wrestling to singles wrestling before teaming up with Larry?
Yeah, that was fine. I enjoyed it. A little
Yeah.
bit different. Had to, forget about my partner, and just say,
Yeah.
okay, now I've got to do it this way, got to do it, and what I had to do was adapt to my opponent, like George
Right.
the Animal Steel. Well, he wasn't certainly going to do, one tackle, drop down, leapfrog, reverse hip toss, kick off, slam, drop kick and stuff like that. So I had to adapt to him. But George was good. He had his gimmick all down pat, and he knew what he was doing. I think one time outside of Syracuse, New York, I was making my way to the ring, and he was on the turnbuckle, razzing me. And I kept walking, and I got to the bottom step, and he looked at the crowd, and then he got off the turnbuckle, and I went to the second step, and then he took another step back, and by the time I got up to the turnbuckle, he was in the other turnbuckle. Yeah. Like he didn't want, the people didn't want anything to do with me.
I heard he was quite a good guy as well.
Yeah. Yeah, George was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how many times. I should have noted how many times I wrestled him, because he used to come in for the summer too, because he was a teacher during the day.
I always read that he was like a school teacher, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he taught wrestling too.
Oh, wow. That part I didn't know, that he taught it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he did. And I should have taken a note of how many times we wrestled, but
I'm sure I could do the research. So
should have, but didn't. Yeah.
Jimmy Valiant, Boogie Woogie, legendary Boogie Woogie. Wait a minute, baby. Wait a minute. Hang on. What are you doing around? What was that calling you, brother? Was that You should be retired, Boogie.
Wait a minute, boys! Let me take a bite of my king dog.
You say King Dog?
King Dog?
Is that what you said?
What happened?
Come on, boy!
Don't let hunger bully you. Get yourself a king dog and you too can become a super hunger fighter.
Secondhand Heroes and Home for Wayward Villains is a comic book shop and gaming store that also features Magic the Gathering and D&D. Located at 18184 Leesville Road in Evanston, Virginia, Secondhand Heroes is your one-stop shop for you to get your nerd on. Open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. They don't close until the dice stop rolling. They buy, sell, trade, barter, and haggle, specializing in collectible toys, both vintage and modern, comics, Magic the Gathering, video games, console, and arcade cabinets to play, all set to free play. Host your game night with us. Monday night D&D video game competitions, and so much more. Something for the collector and gamer in us all. Call 434-317-0121 or shoot us an email with any questions to secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. Note, secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. That's 2ND, handheroesva@gmail.com. Come game with us.
Let's see here. So then you ended up, like I said, teaming up with Larry in about, was that 1977, August 1977. Then you ended up winning the, let's see. You were entered a tag tournament. You lost the finals to Tanaka and Fuji. Yet again, there's those names coming up. And then you ended up, you're going after the titles for a long time. Then the Lumberjacks, you defeated the Lumberjacks for your third tag title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the Lumberjacks. I got a memory of the Lumberjack right here on my arm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I wrestled them. Yeah, he cut me by mistake.
Oh, that's never fun. So, hang on. I got some other questions here for you. So, what was it like teaming with Larry?
Well, Larry was, he was a good amateur, real good amateur wrestler,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I think that, he was able to incorporate some amateur in there, which I stole some of that off him when I went back to my singles later on, and it seemed to work all right. And, but Larry was trained by Bruno, and Bruno said, I won't get you in the business unless you get your college degree. So Larry went out. He had a good memory. He could read a book, for college and not take any notes, but he could remember things there. And I think he passed with a law degree, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he told me he was looking at the FBI, joining the FBI.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard that before.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
we talked a lot. I thought he might have mentioned that, you don't know what's out there anymore.
Right. Yeah. I read that you spent about was it about a year in Mid-Atlantic? Is there any under the Crockett's?
Yeah, with the Crockett's, yeah. There was a gentleman by the name of Don Kernodle, and unfortunately he passed away 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
He was a good amateur, and the way he got into the business, it was that anybody that could stay in the ring with Bob Roop for a certain amount of time,
Yeah.
and Bob
Yeah.
Roop was an Olympic. wrestler.
Yes.
And Bob was just, Don was just a regular high school wrestler. But he stayed in. So he got in the business through that. And Don was my neighbor. And he had these wrestling tights, with the straps over the shoulders.
The singlets.
He
Yeah.
had blue
Yeah.
and red. And they were outside in the sun drying. So I went there and I snatched a pair, and we were working that night. And I said to him, I said, Don, what color are you going to wear tonight? He said, I thought I'd wear my blue. I said, good, because I'm wearing red, So I had my jacket on, and I put these on, and we got into the ring, and I said, Don, we get the instructions from the referee. You turn around and go back to your corner, and when the bell goes, we'll start the match. Okay. So I took my jacket off, so now I'm standing there in his wrestling gear, amateur wrestling gear, and I didn't move from the center of the ring, but he went back, and the bell went, and he turned around, and he looked at me, he said, "You son of a bitch." Oh God. But we had I think that was Burlington, North Carolina. And then we had another match in Columbia, South Carolina. And Ray Stevens, who I say was probably the best heel out there. There's a hell of a lot of good heels going back there, but Ray, he was just a natural. And he commented on our match, which, was a hell of a plug as far as I was concerned, because with what I thought of Ray and the years that he had been in the business to that time, for him to comment, on our match, that was a nice pat on the back.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. He was a great guy too, and so good to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to watch, I think I might have been a little too young to watch him, but I ended up watching. He was associated with the AWA too. I'm not sure if, so he was like towards the later days, he was still kind of involved there before,
Yeah. Well, he was up here. I say up here. He was with the WWE when Vince Jr. took over, and that's when they shot the first big angle with him and Snooker, and it just business just like because usually September, October, November it was kind of it slacked off, from Vince Senior knew how much the houses were going to draw, and he didn't do a lot of angles or anything at certain times, but Vince Jr. to heck with it, and he done that thing with the pile driver on Snooker, and things just shot off from there.
Shot up. Yeah, I always heard like September was not a good month for
because kids are going back to school, money's short.
Yeah. Did you end up going to Georgia at all?
Yeah, I went to Georgia in 1975 for about 6 months.
Right. And what was that like?
I went there with Dean Ho.
Okay.
And we left New York, and we were kind of promised this, promised that, and with all BS, So I was in it, to try and make a little bit, not a lot of money, but a little bit of money,
Right.
And it wasn't working. I had some fun down there, met some great guys there, but didn't do anything. That's when I left for San Francisco.
Okay. All right. You teamed up and you ended up winning the San Francisco version of the World Tag Team titles with
Yeah,
Pat, right? Yeah.
with Pat for a while, yeah.
Yeah. What was it like out there? You
It
liked
was
working out
good. It
there?
was nice and easy. You got home every night. Um, the longest regular trip was Fresno,
Okay.
which was about 180 miles. But then one night we left on a Saturday after the Cow Palace, and can't think of the name of it. We drove up into Nevada, past Reno, I think. I can't think of the name of it. And the sun was coming up, and we were still driving. And there were no pre-sales for the show, so the show was canceled. Then we went on to the next show, which was Winnemucca. And that show was canceled too. So those are the only two shows that I drove to that were canceled and I never got paid for.
Oof. You're wasting money on gas and all that stuff, doing all that. You know, it's just
But gas was only like 44 cents a gallon, something like
right.
that. Mm.
Yeah. Let's see here. Did you end up teaming with Rene Goulet, or was you competing against him?
I
Did you team with
competed
Rene?
against him, and I think we might have had a couple of tag matches, but Renee, where were we? We were in Salisbury, Maryland, and I don't know if it was an oversight or what, but we wrestled there one time, and the next time we were there, which was probably a month back, we wrestled, they booked us again. And he was easy to work with too.
Yeah.
He was funny. He was good to rib, One time we were up there in Canada, I think we were in St. John's, and we're driving back to Halifax, and we stopped for coffee and to change drivers. Like he
Right.
drove halfway, and then I was driving the rest. So we stopped for coffee, and he got a donut, and he got in the car, and he said, "Where's my donut?" In his French accent. And I said, "I don't know where your donut is." He thought I took it. So he looked around, he turned the light on. When he turned the light on, I grabbed his coffee that was in the console and I put it over by the driver's door. I was holding it. And then he looked, he said, "Oh, God damn it, I must have left it on the roof." I said, "Yeah, you must have done." And then he goes to grab his coffee and it's not there. He said, "Monsieur, you got my goddamn coffee?" Oh my God, I almost dropped it. I laughed so hard. Anyway, long story short, he found the donut in the morning. It was in the glove compartment. He must have put it there.
You didn't check there. That's the one place you probably didn't check, right?
Yeah.
So you ended up teaming up with Rick and winning the titles twice with Rick Martel before he came in. He was in there for a couple years. So what was it like teaming with Rick Martel?
Oh, it was great, and we just clicked. Our styles were similar, and we'd been in the business about the same amount of time, and he spent time in New Zealand. And he was working over there with Mark Lewin, who was, he had quite a head for the business, and Curtis Iakea, and also Don Morocco was there too. So, he knew quite a bit about the business for being a young fellow. I think he was 25, 26, and I was 35, 36. I'm 10 years older than him. And And we had a great time, and we didn't, towards the end, we didn't have to say anything. We knew exactly, what was supposed to happen and what was going to happen. And we worked against the Samoans and the Moondogs.
What was it like working against the Moondogs in there?
Yeah, in the beginning it wasn't too good, but I straightened
Right.
them out. Well, I straightened them out. I told them, I said, hey, we can't do it like this. We're not going to make any money, and we're going to hurt ourselves. I
Right.
mean, those guys were both 300-pound plus.
Yeah.
Sailor, that's the original Sailor White and Randy.
Randy Colley.
Yeah, Randy Colley.
was
Yeah,
he ended up becoming the original
I think
Smash,
all
I
the
think.
I think all the Moondogs have passed now.
There's one or two replacement guys that are still kicking.
Mhm.
Because there's so many different versions of the tag team over the years, Memphis
Mhm.
and where else? I'm gonna be speaking to one of them in the next coming weeks, Moondog Splat, who was also Goliath in Memphis. So he spent some
Yeah.
time. I'm trying to remember who he teamed with at the time. Um, but in the next couple of weeks, he might be the only one still kicking. I think so.
Mhm.
When I was doing research for it, everybody I looked up to try to do research, I think it sorry, but passed away. So,
Yeah.
but the originals I think were really the ones that like really, did a great job,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, what else? So you were there for the national expansion too, still part of the company when the things started to change. Was it 1984, 85 when things started getting
84, I
into the
think.
rock?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I wasn't sure what the hell was going on, I see
yeah,
big office in Stamford. Oh no, originally it was up in Cape Cod. And I remember I had to
yeah.
drive there to get my check one time. So God damn, it was the longest drive, And
How far was that from where you were? Where were you living at the time? Were you in Hamden at the time?
yeah, I was at Hamden, so it was about 100 miles to Providence, and then from Providence it was about 80, I think, 85.
Jeez.
I'm not sure. But what a long drive. But when you think about the thing, we used to go to Portland, Maine. That was 240 miles from Hamden. And then we'd stay over in Portland, and then we'd drive to Bangor, and that was another 135. And then from there, we'd drive all the way back to Hamden. So that was 375 one way.
That's crazy.
Out
That's
to
a
the
few
matches.
hours right there. Yeah,
Yeah. And, there'd be 3 or 4 of us in a car,
yeah,
to make it a little cheaper, we'd all pitch in. I think it was 3 cents a mile back then. So everybody would take a turn at driving,
right.
and it'd all work out. You'd save money, and you'd get to the town. And, a couple of 6-packs later, you're there.
Yeah, yeah. So you said you didn't know what was going on. Basically, you weren't sure about this national expansion and stuff like that. They started gearing things towards kids and
Yeah.
cartoons, action figures, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but they were bringing guys in that were built like power lifters.
Right.
They look good, but they didn't know what they were doing.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah. And I was working with most of these guys, and I was towards the end of my mediocre career. I was, I think, in my early 40s then. And I used to tell them, don't do a damn thing unless I call it out there, I worked with Ted Arcidi in Toronto in front of like 65,000 people.
Wow.
I said, oh, shit, I hope I get out of this, which I did, but it was good. He listened.
Yeah.
because I was the old timer then. Yeah.
He was kind of rough, it seemed like at times. I watched him on and off from different areas. He really doesn't have anything to do with wrestling these days. I think he made his first appearance this year at a convention in
Yeah.
decades, seriously. So that was pretty interesting to see that. But yeah, so it was just like you were working with a lot of different people. You ended up coming like sometimes they team you up with newer guys that were coming in, guys like Eddie Gilbert,
Mm.
and I also see you wrestled his father Doug at one point, and you teamed up with Brian Blair briefly for
Yeah.
before he ended up teaming up with
Wow.
Jimmy Brunzell.
Almost more than me.
I did a lot of research, took a lot of notes,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, some of these guys had their idea. I enjoyed working with Brian, and I still see Brian now and again, and Eddie. But
mhm.
Eddie, I don't know whether he took pain pills because he was beat up so much.
Yeah,
I know he came out of the ring one time. He worked with somebody. He said, "Oh my God, he beat the hell out of me," And guys used to complain about this wrestler, and I'd work with him, and it was fine.
yeah. Well, it could be
It didn't
different.
change me. I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to take the chance. I know Gorilla Monsoon showed me a few moves, and I remember in Portland, Maine, one guy was being a little cute with me in the ring, and nobody would know about it outside the ring. So I put into action what Gorilla had taught me, and the guy ended up flat on his face, and I ended up with his leg. So he wasn't going anywhere. But then he changed his tune. I just let him know, that
I mess
not to
around.
start. Yeah, don't mess around. Let's just have a match. Because that's all I was interested in, is just entertaining the people, making them
Right.
believe.
Secondhand Heroes and Home for Wayward Villains is a comic book shop and gaming store that also features Magic the Gathering and D&D. Located at 18184 Leesville Road in Evanston, Virginia, Secondhand Heroes is your one-stop shop for you to get your nerd on. Open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. They don't close until the dice stop rolling. They buy, sell, trade, barter, and haggle, specializing in collectible toys, both vintage and modern, comics, Magic the Gathering, video games, console, and arcade cabinets to play, all set to free play. Host your game night with us. Monday night D&D video game competitions, and so much more. Something for the collector and gamer in us all. Call 434-317-0121 or shoot us an email with any questions to secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. Note, secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. That's 2ND, handheroesva@gmail.com. Come game with us.
It's AIWF. Wanna see the best wrestling? Where to connect? The squared circle, the place you have to earn your respect. So get right with the program or you'll get left. AIWF across the US and all over the globe. We are live and direct. So tune and see who wins and who's up for the Lord. This match just got you over for one.
So that was good. But then I had a couple of guys at a convention. They said, "Oh, do you remember working with superstar Billy Graham in Philadelphia?" I remembered that match. It was a beautiful July afternoon. I'm driving down to Philly. I said, "There's not going to be anybody there." But Bruno and Patero were on the card too. And the place had the biggest crowd they ever had. I think it was 19,500 people. I didn't even think they could get that many in there. And
That was the Philadelphia Spectrum, July 9th, 1977.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, they thought we were like beating the crap out of each other, but you know, we just had a regular match. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Superstar, one of
yeah.
the greatest of all time, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
one of the
could
biggest
be,
stars. Yeah.
yeah, I enjoyed you know, the matches I had with him when he was champion, but then I had a couple when he wasn't champion and he was just like he wasn't into it. But he was on a lot of pain pills and stuff too, I heard.
Yeah. And he died, what was it, a couple years back, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, he
after
had
he got a
been,
liver and stuff.
yeah. Yeah. So in 1987, you retired from active
Hmm.
competition, and then you became an agent for the company. So how was the transitioning? Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, it was you know, a few of the boys were a little upset, you know. Oh, you're becoming an agent, you're becoming a stooge, you know. Well, it's just the job you have to do, you know. But
Yeah.
like I was there where they are, so I could relate to them. And sometimes, you know, they were late getting there, and I'd ask them why we were late. Well, we got traffic. Yeah, you know, there was an accident. Well, stuff like that happens, you know. So,
Right.
but it's not your fault, you know. And then I had to make decisions. I think. Oh, in St. Louis, um, Hulk was on top with Mr. Perfect, and his plane couldn't get in because of the weather. It was
Hmm.
snowing, and this was around July 1st, July 2nd. I think July 1st. And so we kept making announcements. We had a good crowd, you know, that said that they will not let Hulk Hogan's plane land at St. Louis Airport. So shifted all the heat, you know, to the airport people. But it was the weather. So we had
Right.
an 18-man battle royal. You know, and after about the third match, you know, we knew he wasn't coming. So we said, you can get your money back. And about 600 people got their money back. But we had a battle royal, which we announced, and we said, you know, Hogan wasn't coming. And then Dusty and Mr. Perfect ended up the last two in the battle royal, and they had about an 8-minute match, and then Mr. Perfect took a bump over the top, you know, so the people were happy, you know. It was a good
Yeah.
show. It was kind of ad-libbed all the way through. Like the guys would come, Tony, when am I on? I said, I don't know. Just hold up. When I know, I'll put it up there. Uh,
So it could be a fun job and sort of stressful being transitioned into that kind of a position.
I never stressed out too much. Randy Savage said to me, he said, Tony, he says, I don't know if you got everything under control or you just don't give a shit. But, you know, what are you going to do? You just take it as it comes, you know, and even George Steele was an agent too. And he said, Tony, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I said, I don't know yet. I said, I can't say I'm going to do this and then something comes up and I have to change it all again. You know, just wait till the last minute. Like everybody be ready, you know.
Right. Yeah.
We were
So
in
when did you
Germany. I know
go
I
ahead,
was in
sorry.
Germany one time with Jerry Briscoe, and it was after a holiday weekend, and we were leaving from one town, I can't remember, and going to Berlin. And Berlin was
Hmm.
a big town. And there was an accident on the Autobahn. And I looked at the watch. I said, Jerry, I says, we're not going to get there. We need to get a train or a plane. So they made arrangements and we got a plane and we flew up there. And I think it was an 8 o'clock show and we ended up at the arena at 10 to 8. But we had everybody there. So,
Right.
So we were able to start about 8:15, which was late, but at least is better than canceling the show and giving all the money back. And then
I remember.
powers that be back in the States said, well, why'd you do that? Well, just a minute. It's going to rain. So do you go outside and wait for it to rain? Or do you
Yeah.
come in? So, that's the best way I can explain that, I guess.
Right.
We did things, we were there, like in St. Louis, that same St. Louis, and Terry Garvin was the guy that I answered to. I said, Terry, I says, we can't get out to Ohio for a double shot. The planes. He said, well, let me see if I can rent a plane. I said, Terry, they're not letting planes take off or land because of the snow. One time in Bangor, Maine, it was beautiful sunshine. It was 30 degrees, and we had to go to Halifax and Nova Scotia, and the plane was to go from Bangor to Boston, Boston to Halifax. Well, there was a snowstorm in Boston. Big snowstorm came through Pittsburgh, Montreal, Toronto, and it missed Bangor. And I called up Northwest Airlines at the time, and I says, well, would you be able to rent a plane for us with 27 seats? And they called me back and they said, no, I can get 2 planes with 19 seats. I said, that'll do. So we rented the plane and flew from Bangor to Halifax, which wasn't a hell of a long way.
Right.
And we done the shows. We never missed a show.
Wow.
And the other group, there were 2 shows running at that time. And I think they missed 3 shows because of snow.
Did you
One
run the
group
New
was
Haven
stuck in
shows at all?
Pittsburgh, huh?
Yeah. Did you run the New Haven shows at all? Were you in charge of those? Do you remember the
A couple
Coliseum?
of them, yeah, a couple of them.
Yeah. There was
Actually, I think I had the very first wrestling match at the New Haven Coliseum back in
Really?
73, I think, against El Olympico.
Oh wow. My day job, my full-time job, the Coliseum is now a parking lot, or they're building apartments there. My day job is right across the street. I work for the I don't usually mention this on the podcast, but I work for the Knights of Columbus as their headquarters in New Haven, Connecticut. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you know that. So, but
Now I know
I
where to
remember.
find you.
So, I remember there was a show, and it was like a Sunday afternoon that the fans were in, and there was no ring. And this was like a random, probably 1990, 91, maybe 92, and there was no ring. And the ring showed up like 45 minutes late. So we all
Oh,
watched them put
yeah.
it together. So,
I think
so
I remember that, but I can't remember what happened with the ring, and they had to get the ring from somewhere.
really,
I think I was there with
yeah.
Strongbow.
Oh, really? He was still there at the time?
Yeah, I think
Mm.
so.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. It was the first time I think in my life I saw a ring put together. So, and yeah, I don't know. I love. Do you have any other great memories of New Haven Coliseum? Because that was my arena growing up. I went there. I mean, I even went to the last show. The last show that was ever held in the Coliseum before it was torn down was a WWE event in the earlier 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So,
I remember Andy from the Coliseum, a
yeah,
little Greek guy.
right.
Yeah, I think he lived in North Haven. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
I think that's about 10 minutes from me, the North Haven. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I remember him. No, I don't have any other memories on that being I think I was the very first match.
Yeah, that's awesome.
the
Oh.
New Haven Coliseum.
So, what year did you retire
Well,
from
actually, 87, I think, when I became
when you became a Navy?
then I carried my gear with me because some guys didn't show up and I'd have to take their place. Like I work with Barry Horowitz in Sioux Falls, South Dakota,
Hmm.
because Bruno, no, not Bruno, David Sammartino, I think he was fired. And then
Right.
I work with One Man Gang because Junkyard Dog didn't make it out in Salt Lake City. Uh, I remember those two matches, and I worked a few more. But Barry was funny. I knew Barry for years, and I said I was agent too with Jack Land,
Hmm.
and I said to Barry, I said, "You and I are working tonight." You know, I said, "What kind of a finish have you got?" He went, "Oh," and Barry was a little nervous. I said, "Well, get back to me. You know, anything you want." So anyway, I said, "Did you come up with a finish?" He said, "Yeah, Northern Lights, all right." I said, "Fine." And I walked away. And I knew Barry was getting nervous because, you know, he didn't know, you know, what was going on, but I was doing it on purpose. So we went out and we had the match. And he still remembers the match today, you know. It went pretty good. Real good,
Barry
actually.
was quite
Mhm.
the exceptional professional wrestler. You know, I got to witness him many, many times, and he's
Mhm.
been a guest on this program. You know, he was actually one of my very first guests when
Oh,
I
yeah.
started this in 2019. I've had the
Mhm.
chance to meet him several times since, and he's a
Mhm.
very, very nice guy as well.
Oh, yeah. He's super, you know, one of the best in the business, but
Yeah.
he's funny. I remember we were in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and there was a belt. I think it was junior light heavyweight or something like that. And he
Hmm.
won it, and he went absolutely insane. And the people got behind it. It was the best. Uh, you know, reaction for winning a belt that I've ever seen. You know, he just jumped up and down. He held the belt. He kissed it and done everything he could. But the crowd, you know, followed through with him.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, he was great. I saw him in so many matches over the years, like you know, early on in the shows. I saw him. I was in Springfield, Mass for a show once, and you know, it was him and Tim Horner during Tim Horner's stint in the WWF, and he'd always wrestle Roma, like on house shows all the time. So, you know, it was so much fun watching like guys like that, I thought.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they.
You go ahead. Sorry.
Uh, oh, it was on the tip of my tongue.
So
Scientific.
you ended up yeah, scientific wrestling. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much so. You ended up making an appearance, I think, was it during the Steamboat and Jericho feud, if I remember correctly? Probably earlier 2000s, mid 2000s. Was
Mm.
that the one
I,
that
I
and
don't.
you and Martel ended up making an appearance at some point?
Yeah,
Let me see if I can find it right here.
I don't
I had it
recall.
here. No. And this was, let's see. Hang on. Let me see if I can find it here. Ah, crap. I can't type apparently.
Mhm.
So I'll bring it up here in Wikipedia. So I know I saw it yesterday when I was looking it up, and I think you were still working there at the time too. So
Oh, in Houston,
it's on a pay-per-view.
yeah, in Houston, we were introduced and we sat at ringside, and
Yes,
it was Snooker and Slaughter against Deuce and Domino.
that's right. That's what I
Night
have
of
here. Yep, I
Champions,
messed
Night
up.
of Champions, yeah.
Yeah, I messed up the it was you and Martel were sitting ringside and then you ended up brawling with Deuce and Domino. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Deuce, I threw him a punch and he went down like a lead balloon. And boy, what a reaction. That's probably the biggest reaction I ever heard, you know. He went
Yeah.
down.
I think the Deuce and Domino, I think that they're a bit underrated. They don't get a lot of attention like like some of the legends do that from
Yeah.
that time period. But I thought they did very well
Mm.
when they were out there.
Oh yeah, they could they they were good. It was just something in the mix wasn't quite there for them. And they had
Right.
the girl on the skates too. Sherry, was it?
I don't remember the name.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So you want to tell everybody what Tony Garea is up to today?
Well, I've been retired for a few years, and I just go to the gym every morning, and then I go to happy hour with a few guys, 3 or 4 guys, and I have 2 or 3 beers, and that's about it. And then I just enjoying the twilight of my years. I was involved with real estate, and when I first got out of wrestling, I had a couple of partners, and we had some apartments, and I used to go in and paint them,
Hmm.
and I'd get a couple of guys with me and do that. But that's about it. And I try to go to New Zealand every year, but when COVID came and they want all those shots and stuff, they wanted to kill us with that stuff, and I didn't go. So I went this year, but I was away for about 5 years. I got a brother and sister over there. I've got cousins there. So I told my brother and sister, when they put you in the pine box, I'm not coming over to bury you. So if you got any intentions of going in the pine box, do it while I'm here. I was there for about 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good.
That's nice. Yeah.
So I'm between Florida, Connecticut, and Minnesota.
Oh, you still come up to Connecticut?
Yeah, once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I got an account up there.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Probably through you.
Through me. All right. Gladly. Gladly.
With the third party, yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for joining me here today.
You're welcome,
And,
Oak.